Uh, who's giving the intro? Okay. And you're live.
Right. Good morning, friends. I welcome you to this Manthan on February 20th. This is a topic which I'm sure
Who's
is.
giving the intro?
Sorry?
Okay.
This is a topic which I'm sure is engaging the conscience. Right? Good morning, friends. I welcome you to this month. This is a topic which has been engaging the conscience of many conscientious citizens of India and those who believe in our constitution. What should the citizen, the society, and us, what do they do about this hate speech? It is not coming down, it is only going up. And I think that it is time that we discuss this sensitive topic. And we are fortunate to have with us Justice Madan Lokur. Justice Madan Lokur was the earlier judge of the Supreme Court. He was in one article it mentions, and I think it's right, that he's a legal polymath. The slew of decisions which he gave on Kashmiri Pandits, on abandoned widows, on death row convicts, on fake encounters, on the elephant corridors in Kunur, and the clean air in the NCR. I mean, even Taj Mahal owes its some share of its pristine glory to Justice Lokur. I think we are fortunate to have him here on this sensitive topic, and I welcome you, sir. On top of everything, I would also take pride in saying that Justice Lokur has also been a friend of Manthan. I welcome you and thank you for being with us. And I hope that all of us will benefit from your exposition on the hate speech and what we should do. Welcome, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Vikram. It's always a pleasure to participate in a program of Manthan, whether as a speaker or as a listener. You have a wide variety of topics, and it's always a great pleasure to be here. Good morning to all the listeners, and welcome to this program on hate speech. Let me begin by trying to understand what is hate speech. You see, presently, we have no legal definition of what is hate speech. But I think we need to have one. I mean, there are so many terms which need a definition. You could have a crime like murder, for example. How do you define murder? So the law does define murder. The law does define many of these crimes. But we still don't have a working definition of hate speech. Quite some time back, sometime in 1969, the Indian Penal Code was amended. Section 153A, some of us would be familiar with it because of reading about it in the newspapers. It introduces the concept of hate speech. Section 153A of the Indian Penal Code talks about promoting or attempting to promote disharmony. Okay, this is one aspect, disharmony. Feelings of enmity, hatred, or ill will on grounds of religion, caste, community, and so on. And it's punishable with imprisonment of up to 3 years and with fine. So it's not only actually resulting in something, but it is, promoting or attempting to promote hatred, which is a punishable offense. Then you have section 153B of the IPC, which came about a little later in 1972. And the context for that was of national integration. Section 153B talks of causes or likely to cause disharmony or feelings of ill will, hatred, enmity, and so on. between members of a religion, caste, community. And again, this is punishable with imprisonment of up to 5 years and fine. Then the third section, again, something which you would have read in the newspapers, is section 505. This is in the context of public mischief. Here again, whoever makes a statement or a report containing a rumor or alarming news with the intent to create or promote or likely to create or promote enmity, hatred, ill will between religions, caste, community, and so on, punishable with imprisonment of up to 3 years. So it's really, it includes attempt to cause public mischief, attempt to tamper with national integrity, attempt to promote disharmony or to create disharmony. And you may or you may not succeed, it doesn't matter. But as long as you are attempting to do it, and it's broad, it's very wide ranging, public mischief, national integrity, disharmony. The moment you are attempting to do it or trying to create this kind of a friction between religions, between castes, between communities, between regions, and so on, you are committing a punishable criminal offense. So I think the way I look at it, hate speech would come within one of these definitely, and it has a very, very broad sort of a meaning. Now, there are a lot of other statutes also, Protection of Civil Rights Act and so on. I needn't go into all of them. I would just like to mention the Representation of the People Act of 1951. Here, there are 3 sections which are important. One is section 123, which again talks of promoting or attempting to promote enmity or hatred between religions, caste, communities, and so on, for furthering the election prospects of a candidate or prejudicially affecting the election prospects of an opposing candidate. Now, this, is defined as a corrupt practice for the purposes of the Representation of the People Act. Then you have section 125, which again talks of promoting or attempting to promote in connection with an election. The same, discrimination on grounds of race, religion, caste, so on, punishable with imprisonment of 3 years. The only thing is that, you see, 125 doesn't talk about a punishment. 123 doesn't talk about a punishment, but 125 talks about a punishment. But I'm not sure who is the person who is supposed to prosecute, whether it's the Election Commission or how does that prosecution take place. I'm not very clear about that so far as section 125 is concerned. Section 8 of the Representation of the People Act talks about disqualification upon conviction under 153A and section 505 of the Indian Penal Code. It is silent about section 153B, which talks about national integration. So really, if you speak about, religion, caste, community, creed, so on, in the context of electioneering, then it's an offense. But you can get disqualified only if you are convicted, and that conviction takes place under the Indian Penal Code and the Criminal Procedure Code. But like I said, I'm not very clear about, prosecution under section 125, which is really more or less the same thing, promoting or attempting to promote disharmony. Now, sometime in 1999-2000, a committee was set up to review the working of the Constitution. One of the recommendations they made, they gave a large number of recommendations, One of the recommendations that they made related to electoral practices. And they said that under the law, you are liable to imprisonment for a period of 3 years. You are liable to imprisonment for a period of 5 years. The committee said, it was chaired by former Chief Justice of India, Justice Venkatachalaya, very highly respected jurist. There were several others who were involved with it, including Mr. Solicitor, who was an Attorney General. They said that the punishment should be made mandatory. It's not that you are liable for imprisonment for a period of 3 years. They said it should be mandatory. That is number one. The second is that they broadened the scope, and they said that if the candidate himself or his election agent or somebody at the instance of the candidate or the election agent tries to bring about this thing of disharmony between religions, caste, creed, and so on and so forth, then it would result in disqualification. So it is one thing for a candidate to say that, listen, I did not say anything, or my election agent did not say anything. But if somebody at your instance, at the instance of the candidate or at the instance of the election agent, tries to bring about this disharmony or hatred between communities, then the candidate is responsible. So really, again, the committee wanted to broaden the scope of hate speech and to make it into a more serious electoral offense, which is punishable with mandatory punishment and also disqualification. Now, given this, very broad sort of a background or broad sort of an interpretation to what is hate speech or attempt to hate speech or attempt to bring about disharmony, how has the Supreme Court looked at it? There have been election petitions that have been filed in the past with regard to corrupt practices during elections, including those on the basis of religion, but it's not necessary for today to get into that. One of the more important cases that came up for consideration before the Supreme Court, and it resulted in a decision in 2014. I think that's really the starting point, is the Pravasi Bhalai Sangathan. Now, this dealt with hate speech in great detail. And there are three things that stand out so far as this decision is concerned. One is that the Supreme Court looked at hate speech as something intended to or having the effect of delegitimizing, marginalizing people belonging to a religion, caste, community, etc., and beyond causing distress. So it's not, just saying something and upsetting a person, but it is something which is much more than that. So criticizing a person, for example, may cause distress, may cause unhappiness, but then it is something which is beyond that. But what is important that I find in this is that there is no mention of violence. They have said delegitimized, marginalized, and beyond causing distress. There's no mention of violence. This is important, because even the IPC, like I mentioned, doesn't talk about violence, inciting, promoting, and so on and so forth. It may lead to violence, but it may not. And the Supreme Court was conscious of this when it decided in 2014. The second thing which the Supreme Court said, and which I think is very, very important in today's context, they said that hate speech lays the groundwork for discrimination, ostracism, segregation, deportation, violence, and in extreme cases, genocide. So you start with hate speech, you keep progressing, discrimination, ostracism, segregation, deportation, violence, and then the last at the end, genocide in extreme cases. So really hate speech is the beginning of all these problems. And that is why any discussion on hate speech, you have to be very clear about what is hate speech and what does it do, because it can eventually lead to violence. It can eventually lead to genocide in extreme cases. The third thing which the Supreme Court did was that it asked the Law Commission to look into this entire aspect of hate speech and give a report. Now, the Law Commission did look into it as directed by the Supreme Court. And the 267th report of the Law Commission, which was given in 2017, is very, very important. I will just briefly summarize what the Law Commission has had to say. But the troubling aspect is that the report of the Law Commission, of course, it's tabled in Parliament. It is for the government to act upon the recommendations, if necessary, bring about legislation and so on. But nothing has happened. The 267th report is where it is, lying somewhere in the shelf. But what is worse is that the Law Commission has now been abandoned. It doesn't have a chairman. It doesn't have a chairman for the last couple of years. I don't know what they're going to do eventually, whether it will just become a defunct body or whether they're going to have somebody there as the chairman of the Law Commission. I have no idea. But anyway, there is no Law Commission for the last couple of years. Now, what did the Law Commission say about hate speech in other countries? How do some of the other countries look at it? Very briefly, I'll mention that in Canada, they said that you have to look at it from the standpoint of a reasonable person. What is a reasonable person? Now, when I was a student of law and continued as a lawyer and as a judge, I knew exactly what a reasonable person is. But today, I don't know what a reasonable person is. Is a minister who gives hate speech, is he a reasonable person? A minister who puts a garland on persons who are convicted of lynching, is he a reasonable person? If these are reasonable persons, then reasonableness has a completely different meaning from what at least I understood as a student of law and as a lawyer. So really, perhaps in Canada, they still understand what a reasonable person is, but we have a bit of a problem in understanding what is a reasonable person. Canada also talks about hate speech resulting in detestation, vilification, abhorrence, and the effect on a targeted group. Again, no violence. Detestation, vilification, abhorrence, no question of any violence. But what is the effect on the targeted group? This is what we call as a chilling effect. When you put a journalist in jail for saying something, writing something, you have a chilling effect on other journalists. When you have NGOs being raided, you have a chilling effect on other NGOs. So what is the effect on the targeted group? That is important. Australia talks of hate speech as being a subversion of democracy and a denial of respect and dignity. No question of any violence. Denial of respect and dignity. South Africa, again, they are the leaders in dignity jurisprudence. Deprivation of dignity. Hate speech results in deprivation of dignity. No violence. Incidentally, South Africa has something called equality courts, and they deal with issues of this nature. Germany, again, according to the Law Commission, describes hate speech as a serious affront to dignity. United Kingdom, they have the Race Relations Act of 1965. It talks about incitement to hatred rather than incitement to violence. Incitement to hatred on grounds of race, color, national origin. Again, may or may not lead to violence. France and the United States are in a different league altogether. France recognizes as a part of freedom of speech and expression the right to offend. So you have instances of Charlie Hebdo and so on. United States, their courts at one point of time had used the expression of fighting words that is likely to provoke a violent reaction. But they have kind of climbed down from the violent aspect, and now malicious intent and disregard for the truth can constitute hate speech. The important point is that in all these countries, violence is not a consequence of hate speech. When you indulge in hate speech, it may or it may not result in violence. That is important. And that is what constitutes hate crime. And that is what criminalizes that speech. Now, this is, what some of the courts in the other countries have held. You have the Iccpr, International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. This also talks of incitement to discrimination, hostility, or violence. So you have discrimination, hostility, violence. You have a good definition of hate speech in the Council of Europe. The Council of Ministers in the Council of Europe had come out with a definition of hate speech, which is, I'm not using the exact words, but spreading, inciting, promoting, or justifying hatred, intolerance, hostility. Again, no violence. So the moment you try to spread, incite, promote, or justify a point of view which can create a problem in terms of religion and in India, caste, community, and so on, you are guilty of hate speech. So really, the conspectus of hate speech is very, very broad. And one has to be careful when you're talking about, issues of religion and caste, creed, and so on. In India, of course, we have, like I said, the Protection of Civil Rights Act. You can't denigrate a person because of his caste and so on. That's hate speech. So it has a very wide connotation. But what are the courts in India doing about it? I'm sorry to say, but we have tried to bring about the concept of violence in hate speech. Like I said, all through IPC, Representation of the People Act, cases in foreign countries, international conventions, violence is not a part of hate speech. But we have introduced it in some form or the other. You will remember, let me give you some prominent examples of the effect of hate speech, false rumors, false reports, and so on. You will remember that in 2012, there was these images of violence which had happened in Myanmar a few years ago. They were being distributed as evidence of violence in Assam. Fake news, completely fake news. And this resulted in some citizens of our country belonging to the Northeast becoming victims of violence. And it is estimated that something like 50,000 persons from the Northeast went back to the Northeast over a period of time. Over a period of time, meaning a couple of months. I remember watching on television, railway stations were overflowing with people from the Northeast going back to their home state. There were instances of violence, but not necessarily all of them were victims of violence. 50,000 people, all of them were not victims of violence. But that was the chilling effect kind of thing. That, oh, you might, some people have been in trouble, you also might get into trouble, might as well go back home. At least they will be safe. You have in the recent past silly deals of auctioning of Muslim women. You have bully buy, again, an offshoot or a progression from silly deals. Again, auctioning of Muslim women. There's no violence in this. But is it not hate speech? Can you say that, oh, it's okay, freedom of expression? There's no violence. What's wrong with it? But this is hate speech. These people are promoting something. They are doing something which is likely to cause an offense in terms of respect, in terms of dignity, delegitimization, marginalization of these people whose photographs are appearing on the social media, that they're being auctioned. Where is the violence? But there is hate behind it. That is hate speech. You have a Dharam Sansad, which was held in December, I think 17th of December to 20th of December, over a period of 3 days, where there was a call for ethnic cleansing or genocide. Remember, the Supreme Court had said that in extreme cases, hate speech can lead to violence and genocide. Now, this Dharam Sansad talked about genocide. What does the convention, International Convention on Genocide, say? The Genocide Convention defines genocide, that is killing. But Article 3 also says that direct and public incitement to genocide is also genocide. So you don't have to go around killing people. You just have to directly and publicly incite people to genocide. That too is genocide. That's the International Convention. Article 5 of the Genocide Convention says that the contracting parties undertake, and India is one of the contracting parties, contracting parties undertake to enact legislation making genocide punishable and so on. We've not enacted any legislation. So when people talk of genocide, ethnic cleansing, genocide, call it what you like. What is it? It's hate speech, but not genocide, because there is no offense of genocide. We have not enacted any legislation. Hate speech, punishable with imprisonment up to 3 years, which makes it bailable. So you can say whatever you like. Perhaps you get bail almost immediately, which you should, because it's a bailable offense. And, continue with your activities. You have schools, a particular school that was targeted during examinations in one of the states, Madhya Pradesh. Children were giving their examination, and suddenly people came and started throwing stones. They came with iron rods, by the way, also. You have in Agra effigies of Santa Claus being burnt a day before Christmas or on Christmas. No violence, but an expression of hate. You have, I had mentioned, a minister garlanding persons who had been convicted of lynching. Lynching itself, by the way, is violence, hate speech resulting in violence. So you have so many people being lynched on the basis of rumors. Oh, you have beef in your fridge. Now, whether it's beef or whether it's not beef, later on it was found it's not beef. But somebody says it's beef and lynching takes place. Some people lynch, they get garlanded by a minister. We've had in Delhi a minister, not a cabinet minister, but now he's become a cabinet minister, saying Goli Maro. What is that if not incitement to kill? But he says, well, I never said it. I just said you shoot. I didn't say whom you shoot. Those people, those listeners said, we shoot traitors. I never said that. So, these are things that have been happening in the recent past. Now, how have the courts reacted to it? I had mentioned about this Pravasi Bhalai Sangathan in 2014. But you have a few cases even after that. For example, you've had the case of Amish Devgan, right, which came in 2020 or 2021, the decision came, where he talked about, a lot of things about places of worship and so on. And the Supreme Court said, all right, we protect you, but don't do these things again. Look into it. There's a prosecution going on. We are not going to say anything about the prosecution. Let the courts decide what is to be done in the prosecution. But the important thing is they introduced the concept of violence. Supreme Court said that hate speech is an incitement to violence. If it is an incitement to violence, it is punishable. Whereas, like I have mentioned, violence was never a part of hate speech. But Supreme Court has brought in the concept of violence, in spite of the earlier decision of this Pravasi Bhalai, in spite of the report of the Law Commission, in spite of laws in different parts of the country, the concept of violence has been introduced in the Amish Devgan case, which I think is retrograde. You also have another case of Firoz Iqbal Khan, where there was a program which talked about a jihad on the civil services in India. The court said, very important case, urgency, this, that, and the other. We prohibit further episodes of this program being telecast. But since August 2020, that's more than a year and a half, the case has not been taken up. So you have instances of hate speech taking place frequently, resulting in violence, resulting in delegitimization, loss of dignity. But the law has been going in a direction of violence, which is not there, which should not be there. And in spite of the fact that it is a matter of great urgency, a decision is not being taken. So you have these things happening, but resulting in nothing. You have the converse, which has also happened. A respected journalist in Meghalaya, Patricia Mukim, there was an attack on non-tribals by tribals in Meghalaya. She put up a post on Facebook saying that this is wrong. The chief minister should take some action. Why should tribals attack non-tribals? And guess what happened? A case was filed against her for spreading hatred between communities. An FIR was lodged against her under Section 153A of the IPC and again under Section 505 of the IPC, that she's promoting hatred between communities, between tribals and non-tribals. She moved a petition saying that what kind of an FIR is this? I haven't done any of this. I'm saying that please don't do this. Please don't discriminate between tribals and non-tribals. And you're filing a case against me alleging that I'm creating hatred. And guess what? The High Court decided against her and said, no, we're not going to quash the FIR. Face the prosecution. She had to come to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said that, what is this going on? She's not inciting violence. She's not inciting hatred. She's not inciting ill will or enmity. And the Supreme Court quashed the FIR. So here you have the executive. Like I said, Supreme Court has introduced something which is not there. But here you have the executive, which is either silent. It took no action so far as the Dharam Sansad is concerned until the matter came up in the Supreme Court, and Supreme Court said, well, what's going on? Then they said, all right, okay, we are going to arrest some people. They arrested some people. Those people have got bail, by the way. So you have the police or the prosecution not doing anything about it. You have the government not doing anything about it, silent. On the other hand, you have some people from the government, being proactive, garlanding them, these persons who have committed lynching, or, making provocative speeches. One of them just before the riots in Delhi. So you have a sort of an acceptance that hate speech is okay. We as the prosecution or we as the state are going to be silent spectators. I'm not alleging, conspiracy or complicity or any such thing. But, we're just going to keep silent about it. And the courts are going to say, or are saying, that listen, unless there is some violence that is involved, we're not going to do anything. So the cycle of hate speech continues. And as the Supreme Court said in the Pravasi Bhalai, it will lead to ostracism, segregation, this, that, and the other, violence, and genocide. We've had a call for genocide, which, like I said, under the Genocide Convention is genocide. So you have all these things happening, the silence of the courts, the silence of the executive, in some instances, action by the executive, in support of those who have indulged in hate speech and violence, resulting in death. This is, I think, alarming. Can you classify all this as hate, as freedom of speech? No, you can't. Freedom of speech is, there has to be a reasonable restriction. Sovereignty, integrity of India, public order, and so on. Incitement to violence, yes, you can pass a law, Parliament can pass a law and saying if you're inciting violence, we are going to punish you. IPC says that. The committee for to review the working of the Constitution says that. The Representation of the People Act says that. Protection of Civil Rights Act says that. So this is not freedom of speech. This is speech which results in delegitimization, ostracism, loss of respect, loss of dignity. It may or may not result in violence. It may or may not result in genocide. But that does not mean that it is not hate speech. What can we do? Frankly, I don't know. I suppose all that we can do is to show solidarity with some people who are victims of hate speech. It could be individuals, it could be groups, it could, be discussions. I think we just need to think about it. We need to make sure that Parliament enacts a law on hate speech so that we know what is hate speech. We know that hate speech will not be tolerated. As one of the countries had said, I think Australia, subversion of democracy. We know that we can't accept hate speech because what is the progression which the Supreme Court has laid down is happening before us. Violence we have seen, schools being attacked, places of worship being attacked, effigies being burned, people being lynched. We have seen that violence. Are we now reaching the extreme of genocide? Is it not time to act? Is it not time for the public opinion to build up and to say that, listen, let's have a law. Let's get down to action. Let's not just be silent spectators, whether we belong to the executive, whether we belong to the judiciary. As members of civil society, we deserve a civil society. And how can we have a civil society if we have events like this happening around us? And how long are we going to tolerate it? I think we need to think about all this very, very seriously and see how to progress. One suggestion that I have, for whatever it is worth, is to discuss this, persuade Parliament to enact a law, persuade the courts to be far more proactive. There is no point in saying in August 2020, very important, and do nothing about it till February 2022. We need to get the executive involved. We need to get the prosecution involved. There was a case some time back, a person was prosecuted under Section 505 of the IPC, a prominent political leader in the 1990s. Section 505 of the IPC says you need the permission of the central government, you need the permission of the state government, you need the permission of the district magistrate. Take the permission of any one of them. The prosecution did not take the permission of any one of them and launched a prosecution. Supreme Court said, you can't do it. The law says you need permission. So, the prosecution can also play games and say, yeah, we are doing something, knowing fully well that what they're doing is not in accordance with law, so that, the public is happy because they don't know what the law is. And at the end of it, the prosecution achieves its objective of not having the person punished, and at the same time, keeping everybody happy. So I think we need to be on guard. We need to be more vocal about this. And hopefully things will improve. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Justice Lokur. That was a very insightful analysis and discussion of a burning issue. Yes, the prognosis you offer is not very optimistic, but I think you've laid out the issues as it were, at different kinds and different levels. The fact that the Supreme Court is taking interpretation of hate speech in terms of violence, which was not there and which is not there in international conventions. The fact that the courts at all levels have been very slow in acting on hate speech issues. The fact, very worrying, that the members of the executive themselves have participated in such actions and no follow-up has taken place. These are worrying, but as you say, it's ultimately down to public opinion putting pressure on the executive, on the legislature to enact laws and to act on them. I don't want to throw the ball in your court, but how do we, as citizens, different groups of citizens, how do we go about doing that, each in our own way, in a small way, so that it builds up, and eventually it will have to be political parties which take up this issue, because just citizens groups doing it on their own may not have an impact. How do we, could you offer, as I said, I am throwing the ball in your court, but if we can talk about, in what small way can each of us as individuals and as members of different groups, whether just NGOs or as journalists or as, even WhatsApp groups, for example, which have played a very damaging role. Maybe they can also play a positive role in this respect. I wonder if you could share your thoughts on that.
Yeah. You see, like I said, it's I really have no solution to this. But I think all that we can do as members of civil society is to keep, the pot boiling, so to speak. Discuss this, there are so many things that we have to discuss. And once we, bring this into focus in a positive manner, not in a negative manner, because negative manner, people are already doing it, lynching and all that is going on. But if we as members of civil society discuss this in a positive manner, that listen, this is what is happening. Schools are being attacked. Kids, school children giving examinations, they're being attacked, right? What is the kind of message that we are sending? And should we be sending this kind of a message in the first place? So I think if we have groups of individuals who are there to say that, listen, this is not acceptable. Perhaps, somebody will wake up. But what is coming in the way is this chilling effect, which has been recognized by Canada. So if some journalists talk about it, send them behind bars. It has a chilling effect. If some NGOs talk about it, cancel their license, deregister them, so others keep quiet. This, I think, is a big threat to civil society. So if there are groups, 10 groups which talk about this, and one group is put behind bars, the other 9 will keep quiet. That chilling effect is what is really the problem. I don't know how to go about it. We were shown the way in a manner of speaking by the women who protested against the Citizenship Amendment Act. You do what you want, we are going to protest. The farmers, do what you want. Even if people die, it doesn't matter. We are going to protest. So, I don't know. I suppose this seems to me to be the only way as of now.
I want to do one legal quibble. Is hate speech different from a hate crime? That where there is an action, let's say a vandalization or something of that sort, is it of a different grade than a hate speech in the punishment?
Yes, it could be. You see, if I vandalize a place, I'm damaging property. I'm actually doing it. It's a punishable offense. It may be 3 years, it may be 5 years, depending upon the gravity. Or hate crime, lynching is a hate crime, right? A person can be sentenced to life. But speech, as far as the IPC is concerned, just talks of, up to 3 years imprisonment and fine, or both. So up to 3 years could mean anything. It could mean a month, it could mean a week. So really, but unless, we give greater importance to hate speech as a crime, or as a criminal offense, this up to 3 years will really be of no consequence. And how do you define hate speech? Like this Patricia Mukhim, she says, no, don't kill non-tribals. They say, oh, this is hate speech. How do you define an action like that as hate speech? So, everybody is, floundering. The prosecution is floundering. Maybe deliberate. I don't know. But, if you continue to flounder and continue to give an interpretation which is non-existent, it's the cycle is not going to end.
Yeah. Another question, sir. This is from my friend Sandeep. In India, Article 21 protects the rights of life and dignity. Should hate speech be looked at through this lens? Does Article 21 only limit itself to individuals?
Article 21, it's not only individuals. You see, for public interest litigation, for example, public interest litigation, most of it, if not all of it, is based on Article 21 of the Constitution, life and liberty. So it's not only individuals, it's groups. So a particular group, you have, children, for example, it's a group, large group. On behalf of children, a public interest litigation is filed. Bonded labor, large group. On behalf of bonded labor, a public interest litigation is filed. It could be a subject, environment, air pollution, water pollution. So Article 21 has a very expansive meaning. It's not limited to individuals. Groups are also a part of it. And if a group is being targeted, certainly they can say that, listen, our right to life and liberty is being targeted and we are being deprived of it, and the state has to do something about it. The state has to give that protection. Otherwise, you encourage vigilantism, which is not a solution, according to me. So, yes, I would say that Article 21 is broad enough to take this into consideration.
You're muted, Ram.
Sorry, Justice Lokur, there's a question from Venkateshwarlu, and it says that if we are to enact a law, what would be the broad outlines of such a law that you want Parliament to enact? Can I add a supplementary to that? The Supreme Court, perhaps when you were on the court, they asked the states to enact laws against lynching. Now, some of those states have enacted laws, but they have not received assent, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, 4 states.
Yeah. So how would you respond? What kind of law and what kind of law would get assent? I mean, assuming that it is the legal issues that are standing in the way of being given assent.
Yeah. There are 2 aspects to this question. One is what kind of a law, right? Now, there is an attempt, like I said, by the Council of Ministers from the Council of Europe. They have defined hate speech. Okay, that could be a working paper, so to speak. Spreading, inciting, promoting, or justifying. Spreading, inciting, promoting, or justifying hatred, intolerance, hostility, and so on. This could be a starting point for a debate, keeping violence out of it. So you can target people like they're doing in the Sulibai or bully deals. All right, there's no violence. Does this qualify as hate speech or does it not qualify as hate speech? There can be a debate and a discussion on that. Why bring in the concept of violence? I would say, yes, it does qualify as hate speech. So you have a starting point. You have the Law Commission, which has given a report. It's a document which is really worth reading, because they have analyzed the law 2017. I don't know whether the law has changed since then. It's unlikely. But they have analyzed the law in about half a dozen countries. So these are working papers. I mean, using the word papers loosely, which can form the platform for a discussion and a debate and a definition of hate speech. The second is whether well, if it's Parliament, of course, Parliament can legislate on this. And I would assume the President would, accept the decision of Parliament. But what happens in states is a different ballgame altogether. West Bengal has come out with a law on lynching. Manipur has come out with a law on lynching. It's been a couple of years, not in West Bengal, but in some of the other states, 4 states, not enacted in law. You have, I mean, we're talking about, current affairs, the NEET, accepting NEET or not accepting NEET, Tamil Nadu. It's current. Governor said, no, I'm not going to accept it. You have governors in different parts of the country doing their own thing. So whether, and lynching is something which at least 4 governors have not taken any action. And in some of them, they've sent it to the government of India, where the government of India is sitting on the legislation. So whether it will be accepted, I don't know. I can't say.
The question says that from SEMA, that the high courts don't seem to be performing any longer as an independent body, especially in matters of hate speech, I would guess. So I have a question, a follow-up to that. Can courts do anything about it at all? Or the problem is much bigger than what we expect the judiciary to solve?
Well, the courts can at least take the first step. If a case comes up, okay, now I had mentioned about that Firoz Iqbal's case, August 2020. Court said it's an urgent matter, listed on certain such date. On that date, adjourned to some other date. On that date, adjourned to some other date. After April 2021, as far as I'm aware, the matter has not been listed. Almost a year, 10 or 11 months. Now, if the court says that yes, it's an urgent matter, then it must hear it. You see, you can't say that it's an urgent matter, but I will not hear it, or I will hear it in good time. So somebody has to take the first step. And there are issues pending before the court. Why are they not taking the first step? The government knows, the state knows, the political executive knows. Why are they not taking the first step? That you have a call for genocide, ethnic cleansing, whatever you may wish to call it. Why are they not taking the first step? So the problem seems to be that nobody is taking, or nobody wants to take the first step. So how do we progress?
That leads the question by a person whose name is appropriately termed Sevak. This links up to what we started the conversation with. He asks, is there a scope for civil resistance within the parameters of law and our constitution, on the lines of civil disobedience of Gandhiji?
Yeah, of course. But the right to protest is also
but as you said, the farmers have shown what is possible if they can mobilize, and they stayed through 2 winters and able to, and similarly the women of Shaheen Bagh. Difficult decisions, at considerable cost, but I guess they offer rays of hope. I can say that.
Perhaps that's all that you can say about it.
Slightly different question. I mean, again, related to another viewer asked that another issue that has not been defined is housing discrimination. When people are denied access to housing, there is no redressal. The reasons are not given, and there is subtle discrimination at work. And we see very few people using 153 to report this. How would you see this?
Yeah, you see there, you would have heard this expression that the process is the punishment, right? Our legal process is, very torturous. You go to court, adjournment, somebody is not available, somebody is sick, and the case goes on for years together. So a lot of people, say, okay, we just take it rather than go through all this. Look at this lady, Patricia Mukhim from the Northeast, from Meghalaya. She had to come all the way to the Supreme Court. Now, is it not something that could have been sorted out at, first of all, FIR should not have been filed. But anyway, it has been filed. Could it not have been sorted out at the level of the High Court and quickly? Why does it have to come to the Supreme Court? Feroz Iqbal Khan, since 2020, he's been saying, don't do, this is wrong. So how many people have that kind of, time, patience, money, mobility? All this adds up to the process being the punishment. So theoretically, yes, people can go to court and say housing discrimination, this, that, and the other, but what's going to happen? You don't know. And if something does happen, you don't know when it's going to happen.
The question which Shanta Sinha asked is, what law can be framed when the state itself sponsors, encourages, and is a party to hate speech?
Yeah, that's the problem. That's the problem. Where you have a minister garlanding lynch, persons who are convicted of lynching. Not even accused, convicted of lynching. What do you expect? Where you have a minister a few days before the Delhi riot saying, Goli maro, shoot them. You have a member of parliament or an MLA or somebody saying that I'm giving you 2-3 days to pack up or else. What do you do?
Then these cases should be taken suo motu by the Supreme Court.
Yes, it should be. It should be. But the thing is, that first step, will the courts take up that matter suo motu, take the first step? Will the courts have the support of the executive? Or the executive will say, that's perfectly all right, or justified, worse. What's wrong with it? Freedom of speech. On the one hand, you talk about freedom of speech. Here is somebody who's saying, shoot them, and you say, no, you can't say something like that. What do you do?
There's a question from Ranjan Chap. He's probably thinking ahead. He asks, how do we ensure that strengthening the hate speech law doesn't just make it a stronger weapon for a government to apply against its political opponents?
Yes, there is a problem. There is a problem of enacting a law. There is a problem of implementing a law. I think it's a very important question. You see, take the case of sedition. Right? Way back in 1965, Supreme Court said that sedition, just saying something is not good enough. It must be an incitement to violence or must lead to violence. But today, you have somebody saying something innocuous. You may not like it. I don't like it when they say something like that. But it's not sedition. And that person is prosecuted for sedition. You have a case of a girl from Bangalore being brought to Delhi for putting up something called a toolkit on social media and being accused of sedition. So you have a law, right? You have an interpretation given by the Supreme Court, correct interpretation, nobody is doubting it. But the law itself is being misused, it's being abused. Journalists are put in jail for months together on grounds of sedition. Why? Because they have written something. Somebody reports about a communal riot somewhere, FIR is filed. Allegation of sedition, sometimes of being a terrorist, which makes it even worse. So yes, he has a point. You may come out with the law, you may come out with the right interpretation, but what is there to prevent its abuse? The law on sedition is a prime example of this. It's being abused. The law of terrorism, UAPA, being abused. You may not agree with sedition, but there is a law which is intelligible. You may not agree with the UAPA, but there is a law intelligible. But it's being abused, misused, if not abused. You can't prevent that. So therefore, it has to be collective, where the executive is involved, where the judiciary is involved, where the legislature is involved. You pass a law, say, I'm not going to refer it to a standing committee. I will pass it because I think it should be like this. Well, it may not be.
So the question which Jitendra asks in the context is that what can a common man do? I mean, how can he defend or protect his rights in the most economical course? I mean,
yeah. Well, it depends. We have Legal Services Authorities Act, and I don't think it's being implemented properly or effectively. A large section of our people are entitled to free legal aid. All women are entitled to free legal aid, regardless of their economic status. All children are entitled to free legal aid. All disabled people, but persons, I think the limit now is about 1 lakh. If your income is more than 1 lakh, then you're not entitled to free legal aid. But in some places, they have something called, this legal aid for middle income group, MIG legal aid. So you may be having income of 1 lakh to 5 lakhs or something. 1 lakh to 10 lakh, you're entitled to partial legal assistance. So really, the common male, has to some extent, the assistance of the Legal Services Authorities Act and the law and the Legal Services Authorities. Women have it, but not being effectively, implemented. And that, coupled with the, process being so torturous, it's okay to say that, I have the right, I'm a woman, I'm entitled to free legal aid. But am I going to go to court for every little thing, day in and day out? I won't. Even if you give me free legal aid, I still won't go. So, it has to be looked at, in a composite manner. That's why reforms are necessary. Very, very critical.
Yeah, this widespread use of the executive machinery to control dissent. Is it one form of hate? CBI, ED, IT. Sometimes I pity the ED people because they're having too many cases. I don't think they have enough people to handle this. That's a different problem altogether.
Yeah.
Give them ideas.
Is the state hating these people?
I don't think so because, there's no intention to cause disharmony or public mischief or, the executive, these agencies don't have that in mind. But chilling effect, yes. So I wouldn't call it hate speech, or hate action or hate crime or anything. But the intention is different. In many cases, it would be genuine, but in many cases, it would not. It would just be to scare people.
There's a question. Sorry, yeah. No, we have spoken about what the judiciary should or shouldn't be doing, and we're talking about what the legislator should be doing and hasn't been doing. One question is, has a kind of signaling been done, message percolated down to the police, the local police station, in terms of the kind of FIRs that are registered and the kind that are not registered? So it is kind of signal that, look, hate speech of certain kind is permissible. Interpretation of certain actions, like Patricia Mukim, for example, in that case, it can be interpreted in a certain form. And in others, you just don't take cognizance. So in a sense, we should be not just talking about a law, but how a certain kind of signaling has taken place that the police at lower levels are quick to interpret the law in terms of what they feel the ruling political environment is like.
Yeah. This actually brings in the issue of police accountability. Today the police can get away with anything, right? They cremate a victim of rape and murder in the middle of the night without even telling the parents of that girl. Nothing happens. If there is a bit of noise, you get transferred from one police station to another police station. Big deal, And if you're in a big city like Delhi, or Bengaluru, or Chennai, getting transferred from one police station to another police station, what difference does it make? Or if you're in some district, from getting transferred from one district to another district, what difference does it make? If that is the kind of punishment, the police are not accountable. There's no, remedy for compensation to a victim of police excesses. You had that situation, it was in Madurai. Father and son were beaten to death. What happened? So, police accountability is equally important. Why are they filing false cases? Why are they opposing bail? A person is ill. He's got, all kinds of medical problems. You say, no, I will not, I will oppose his bail. He wants a straw so that he can drink water because he's got Parkinson's. No, I will not give him a straw. Let him go to court. If that is the attitude and there is no accountability, what do you do? So I think...
I think here the judiciary is entirely to blame for not being empathetic.
Yeah.
To the alleged accused.
Yeah.
There's a common linked question. Maybe we should have a are there any groups that in India that try and spread this education on hate speech? And should there be a tribunal for hate speech? Or should at least we start documenting them like like Shanta says, for at some point in time, maybe you should have a trial like the Nuremberg trials.
Yeah, it should be. I agree with her. It should be. You see, one of the problems really is of getting data. We had that huge problem, which everybody knows, of getting correct, accurate data during the COVID. How many people have been vaccinated? How many people have been hospitalized? How many people have died? Today, we are still talking about backlog deaths. And there are so many occasions when, statements have come saying that nobody died because of lack of oxygen. The number of deaths have been accurately recorded. There's a press release from the Press Information Bureau that reports of deaths are false. Then what about those backlogs? How come they're backlogs if the earlier reports were correct? So unless you have accurate data or reliable data, it's difficult to go ahead. Then you have others who come out with their own data. You have organizations belonging to one religious community, which says that there have been so many attacks, 300 or 400 attacks against members of our community. It's easy to say that, listen, it's all biased. You're just inflating figures. Why? Because the official figure shows only 10 attacks and you're saying 300. Whom do you believe? So in the absence of, accurate, reliable data, if you have, like you have the Equality Court in South Africa, if you have some kind of a tribunal, as Shanta has suggested, or some kind of a court, perhaps people will be able to come forward. But then how many courts are you going to have? Then you have problems of vacancies. 40% of the courts are lying vacant because you don't have people. You have people, but they're not being appointed. So you have a equality court or a hate crime court or a tribunal, as Shanta has suggested. Nobody's appointed. What do you do?
I wish we could end with a more optimistic note, but I leave it to Ram.
Sorry for that, but
no, just it is. You have given us a very, and let's use the word, difficult scenario, ahead of us. I think we should acknowledge that rather than wish it away. There are difficulties at all round. It's at judiciary, legislature, executive, and we haven't really talked about, that political parties, even those in the opposition, have not really taken up this issue. But you have also laid out a broad pathway that we as citizens should take. So thank you very, very much for that. And I'd like to end with what you yourself referred to. These are not straws in the wind, but these are concrete struggles which achieved, very, shall I say, just ends. Foremostly, farmers' agitation, which some say was the longest running farmers' agitation in the world, which made one of the most powerful governments in the world listen to them, and entirely in a non-violent manner. Similarly, the women of Shaheen Bagh 2 years ago. So there are still openings, difficult ones, with cost will have to be paid. But if we have to realize a just society in some manner, we have to take that path. So thank you for laying this out for us to think about in the days and months ahead. Thank you very much, Professor.
Thank you. Thank you
very much.
Just to tell our viewers that next week we will have another talk on a different matter. This will be a conversation on Ramchandra Guha's latest book on rebels against the Raj. This is about a Western citizens who fought for India's freedom. He will be in conversation with Rukmini Banerjee of Pratham. So please tune in next Sunday, same time, 10 o'clock. So Justice Lokur, thank you again very, very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you for being at
Thank you.
Manthan.
Okay, ending stream now.